Welcome to A Post-Meat Generation. This is a space where we talk about a future vegan world. We talk about the technologies that have the capacity to bring us towards that vegan world and how that can help not just the animals and the environment, but our own health as humans that live on this planet. So today I thought I'd just start off by talking about the science of lab meat. Basically, lab meat is when suitable cells or stem cells are proliferated in a bioreactor and grown. These stem cells can be gathered in one of two ways. The first way is basically to gather them from the early stage of an embryo. So in the same way that human embryonic stem cells are grown, we can grow animal stem cells. And this can be done without killing an animal. It's basically like human in vitro fertilization. So an embryo is grown and then discarded, but the embryonic stem cells are kept so that they can be grown using a bioreactor. The other way is to take a biopsy from an animal which is already living or is dead. This is a direct and immediate way to gather these stem cells, but it also means that a new biopsy has to be done every single time a new batch of meat is created. So is it vegan? This is where we start talking about the ethics of lab meat, because if they are consuming something from a living creature, it doesn't really align with the value of veganism, which is to abstain from eating all animal products. How does this change our relationship with animals? Typically, we don't directly confront animals when we are dealing with meat. We confront a disarticulated substance, a substance that has been completely abstracted from its origins so that we don't really remember that it is from an animal that was living, breathing, and sentient. Carol Adams calls this the absent referent. We use language to disassociate the meat from the animal. So instead of a pig, it's pork. Instead of a cow, it's beef or steak. The language perpetuates the culture around meat eating. The animal has become marginalized because we as humans take what is intrinsically theirs and assume that we have the right to use them for our food source. So now we have the power to actually create the animal. Does this just feed our ego as humans? Do we have a right to create what is not ours and what we aren't? Cheryl Kolb says that animal products are unnecessary for our diet. So by creating these lab meat, we're actually perpetuating the culture that animals are there for us to consume. I would argue that this kind of allows us to commit to meat eating and to give us an excuse to continue to eat meats. So as a vegan, no, I wouldn't consume these products. But then again, like we were saying in our last video, I do understand that it is a transitioning tool. Cultured meat is in many ways a conservative technology that is preserving this culture of meat eating and meat consumption and speciesism that we have become accustomed to. Cultured meat is a prolongation of our meat consumption. Also, veganism wants to alleviate the environmental pressures put on the environment by animal agriculture. And there still is a huge impact that these technologies will create, even though they can be built in vertical farms, even though they use less resources, they will still be using some resources, which is way more than just feeding vegetables to people. It's still a middleman that's unnecessary in the production line. If we're talking about speciesism, humans and animals are the same. So by creating animals, does that give us the right to then experiment? Does that give us the right to then eat exotic animals because they never lived and they never suffered and thus they never were killed? Does this mean that we can move on to things like cannibalism because we have the power to create human cells, to create human meat? If we're preaching that humans and non-human animals are the same, then isn't it okay for us to then eat petri dish versions of humans? That's kind of a bit of a step in a different direction, but it's all around the same idea that we need to consider this as a possibility, and we need to say whether this technology is actually necessary to create a post-meat generation, a post-meat world, or whether we can just skip out the middleman altogether and create a vegan world. The next video is on how we can create a more practical and predictive future for testing without the use of animals and with the use of new technologies. Thank you.